Our special guests and dignitaries are here. Please make your way back into the room. Ushers, do help us beckon on people. Let's do some people movement. Ushers and members of the team, the Heritage Times team, the NCDMB team, please move people back into the room. Thank you.
She said she lady from the doctor. Turn up for she make a lot of my kefara. Baby, come take me far. Getting sure you take me far. Always thank me for, you know I'm there one day looking at pull up in there and I take for Santa I'm not niggas and my you know I'm there one day looking at pull up in there and I take for Santa Monica. No did that but I'm not niggas and my
Ushers and team members, please help us move people back into the room. Please move people back into the room. Welcome back. Welcome back. Distinguished guests, welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. We're glad to have you here with us again. This is still the African Local Content Investment Forum. Welcome back. Someone is missing a phone. We have the phone in hand. I have a phone in my hand that doesn't belong to me. It was found somewhere in the room. Please, if you're missing your phone, just come up to the table by my left. Tell us the make of the phone, show us proof of ownership, give us a police report, your BVN, mother's maiden name, last 5 numbers dialed, last 4 digits of your SIM card, and how much you recharged last, and we would hand the phone right back over to you. So if your phone is missing, please meet us at the table over here and we'll hand it over. As we get ready for our next 2 conversations, We would like to have a praise for the African continent, for how far we've come and what has been done so far. Leading this praise is a woman with a powerful voice. If you were here at the start of the event or you joined us live online, you would have seen her serenade us with the first and second stanzas of the Nigerian national anthem. Representing the Council of Arts and Culture and also first runner-up of the Voice Nigeria 2021, let's welcome back on stage Naomi Palladini as she takes us away. If your hands are free, please give her an African appreciation.
So much. Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here. And as Africans, we do exploit. And that's what we're made for. Hey. Hold on, everybody. You're a soldier, choosing your battle. Pick yourself up and dust yourself off and back in the saddle. You're in the front line, everyone's watching. You know it's serious, we're getting closer, this isn't over. The pressure's on, feel it, but you got it all. Believe it, when you forget up, oh, if you forget up, baby, cause this is Africa. Listen to your God, this is our motto. Your time to shine, don't wait till you come up for daughter. People are raising their expectation. Don't want to be them. If you get that, this is Africa, a beautiful place. This is Africa. Oh, yeah. This is Africa. Can we take the other song now? Hey. This one is titled Ulilala. Ulilala. Where mango boy. You know I'm you shed some fun. Ulilala. Where my nyausa. So I know one. You know I'm tired. Your mama called you. Oh, yeah, I know I'm don't get love. My heart, baby. Who's the fix? Who's that shot way? That shot is down on Monday. Baby, I'm the catch we're drawing on Uncle Bless. Come on. Oh, and I don't go dry. Come on.
Give it up for Naomi, Palladini, and her band. Thank you so much. Thank you. And welcome on stage our moderator for the second panel of today, Mr. Rotus Odiri, host of Arise Global Business Report. If your hands are still there, please appreciate him and give him a warm welcome. Mr. Moderator, sir, over to you.
So much, Joyce, Titanium, Daniels. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Great performance there. All right, let me call to the stage, actually introduce our panel discussion. We're going to be talking about financial institutions as a catalyst for sustainable local content development, mandates, offerings, expectations, commitments. So very much looking forward to this panel. Let me first of all call to the stage and please appreciate him, Mr. Isaac Yala, Director of Finance and Personnel Management at the NCDMB. You're welcome, sir. You're very welcome, sir. Thank you so much for joining us. All right. Also going to be calling to the stage Mr. Sediko Duka, who is the ECOWAS, Economic Community of West African States, Commissioner for Energy and Mines. Very welcome, sir. ECOWAS is in the building. Very Pan-African discussion that we've been having today. Also want to call to the stage Mr. Abubakar A. Bello, who is the MD of the Nexim Bank, ably represented by Mr. Tayo Omidiji, who is the Head of Strategy and Planning at the Nexim Bank, Nigerian Export-Import Bank. You're very welcome, sir. Thank you so much for joining us. And also want to call to the stage Mr. Imo Uma, who is the Manager, Client Coverage at Stanbic IBTC with us as well. You're welcome, sir. Thank you very much for joining us. And also joining us virtually from Kampala in Uganda, we should have Mrs. Jessica Cheyune, who is the National Content Specialist at the Uganda National Oil Company. Should have her as well. You're all very welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Mr. Yala, let me start with you, since the NCDMB is putting all this together. Can you talk about how far we've come and the products and services that I guess you've put together to encourage financing for local content development?
Thank you very much, Rotus. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. To start with, I think it's very important to go back in history to identify how far NCDMB has come so far. To start with that, I think I cannot leave out the creation of NCDMB by the Act of Parliament. In 2010, the National Assembly created the Nordic Act 2010, which enabled NCDMB as an organization to support the growth of Nigerian content, which we properly call local content in this part of the country, in this part of the world. And there were two mandates that we can derive from the act itself. There was a monitoring mandate and also a developmental mandate. So the monitoring part of it is also to support the growth of, or monitor the growth of Nigerian content as the operators operate within the confines of the country, as well as a developmental function, which has to do with how do we support in terms of capacity building initiatives. So that was the essence of the key mandate of NCDMB. And also, I think the drafters of the act were very, very clever enough to also put a very specific section in that act, which is section 104, and which talks about how do we fund these initiatives, okay? And in that, they said 1% of all contracts awarded in the upstream side of the oil and gas shall be deducted and remitted to a special fund to be managed by NCDMB. And that is where funding becomes very, very key to the success of this very strong initiative. Now, as a result of that, also a spin-off of that was in 2016, when the new executive secretary came on board, he decided to work with the entire team to set up a 10-year strategic roadmap. And in 10 years, that strategic roadmap, two key objectives were supposed to be derived out of that. Firstly, 300,000 jobs to be created within 10 years, as well as grow Nigerian content from what it was in 2016, 26%, to about 70% by 2027. So in that particular document, there are 5 key pillars, and then 4 enablers. So I'm going to speak more directly to one of the key enabler, which is the funding enabler, without which probably wouldn't be sitting here today to talk about how we'll be able to put investments together. Now, out of the funding enabler, what we decided to do, particularly those of us who deal basically with finance and investment, was to create a robust investment policy. So in creating that investment policy, we looked at 2 things in terms of our asset allocation. We looked at how do we deal with tangible asset class and intangible asset classes. Now, in the tangible asset class, we were able to create instruments that can help to finance debt as well as equity financing, which is what during the presentation of my executive secretary, he was able to mention some of the investment in modular refineries and all of that, where we take equity in these companies that we participate in, as well as the most important one, which is the intervention financing that we have done with some of the DFIs locally. So as part of that, what we now did was we worked with the first DFI we worked with was Bank of Industry. We were able to sit with Bank of Industry, which are very common products you have in all commercial banks. We developed 5 product lines, starting with the manufacturing product line, and then we also had the asset acquisition product line. We also have the contract finance, contract refinance, and then also the community contractor financing. Now, the first 4 products I mentioned are all dollar denominated because of the capital nature of these investments. They are all $10 million single obligor limit at 8%, and then 5-year period, except for the refinancing one that does not have a moratorium period. So we also created a moratorium between 6 to 18 months moratorium period for most of them. But the last one, which has to do with the contractor financing scheme, has to do with some of those small companies that operate within the service companies and also operating companies. That has not been very successful to talk about because probably because of the nature of that product line, where you need massive retail fronts, to be able to deliver on those projects and all of it. So that's how far we have come with Bank of Industry. Then the second product line, when it comes to product offering program, I'll go into some of those details. We also established the Nexim NCDMB financing scheme, where we set aside, before I go into the Nexim, sorry, I had to mention that we also set aside 200 million, which later was topped up to 300 million with Bank of Industry.
Dollars or naira?
In dollars, in dollars. And that's been a very, very successful scheme because we've been able to grow that fund with BOI over the last 3.5 years to 4 years to almost close to $400 million. So that's been quite successful. But of it, I think we have 3 of the product lines that have done successfully well. We have the asset acquisition, we have the contract finance and the refinancing product line. That of manufacturing and contractor financing scheme for the local contractors have not been very well, and we're working with the Bank of Industry on how we can fine-tune those products so that we can also deliver it to beneficiaries. Now, coming to the Bank of Industry, because of the success of the BOI scheme, we decided to create another intervention fund this time around, and it came out of the lessons we learned out of the COVID incident during the COVID incident, where many of these companies were struggling. And we thought it wise that we should provide some kind of support to be able to alleviate these companies so that they can stay afloat and continue to pay salaries and keep workers afloat. So we decided to create a $50 million intervention fund with Nexim. But that is a bit different because for that, Nexim also is providing a matching fund of Naira equivalent, local currency Naira equivalent of $50 million as well. So the size of that basket relatively is about $100 million, so to say. So you can have funding both in Naira and also in US dollars. And there we have, it's broken into 2 parts. We have what we call the working capital initiative and the working capital and capacity building initiative, which was one product itself, where single obligor limit is about $1 million to that. And then we have the other one, which is women in oil and gas. That's $500,000 to be given to women in oil and gas to encourage the development of women in that space in oil and gas. So that was the second product that was developed. And then in all, we also, for that Nexim facility, the interest rate was 5%, all in. And for a Naira denominated facility, that's 8% all in, and no other fees and all of that attached to that. So that is already ongoing, and then we are working very audaciously to ensure that we get it out there to the beneficiaries. Then outside of that, we also created the R&D fund, which we also created to incubate a lot of activities around the R&D space, which $50 million was also set aside for that. But right now, we're also working on the fourth product line, which has to do with when the Executive Secretary made his presentation, he talked about our NOGAP park, which is industrial parks being built by NCDMB. Two of those parks, one in Cross River State and then the other in Bayelsa State, should be commissioned around the fourth quarter of this year. So in order to get into these parks, part of what we're trying to do is to create an incentive for manufacturing entities that want to come and incubate their businesses or grow up their businesses in this park. So we've been able to set aside a $50 million, and we're expecting that any of the fund manager that will want to support us will also provide a matching fund up to 75% of that value in local currency, since we're providing ours in US dollars. And then also ensure that the regime of single interest rate and also tenor flexibility are also included in all of that. So basically, I think to give you an highlight of what we have done so far, these are some of the product lines that we have developed to catalyze these businesses and also provide the necessary support we think we should provide to support the growth of Nigerian business. But also in all, during the pandemic, also we, under the leadership of the Executive Secretary, he also felt since the CBN is also providing some palliative in terms of rates regime, we also brought our investments by 2 percentage points, by bringing it from 8% to about 6% for the Bank of Industry facilities until otherwise we should be able to go back to the reality of the business environment when things begin to pick up. So that's much I can mention for now relative to the kind of product offerings we have. Thank you.
Fantastic. Very, very in-depth. Thank you so much. You can see the NCDMB is really supporting industries out here in Nigeria. Thank you so much, Mr. Isaac Yala, Director of Finance and Personal Management, NCDMB. Sir, I want to come to you, Mr. Sediko Duka, ECOWAS Commissioner for Energy and Mines. What can as far as African nations are concerned, institutions, what can they expect from finance with respect to geo-extractive activity? What kind of finance can they expect from financial institutions?
Yeah, thank you very much. Good afternoon. First of all, on behalf of the ECOWAS Commission, let me thank NCDMB for the event, the invitation to that forum. So before describing member state expectations from financial institutions, let's say that the main role, according to us, should come from government, because government is supposed to establish enabling environment. For example, to establish a local content development agency, because so why we thank Nigeria. I think within the 15 West African countries, it's in Nigeria for now that we have a specific entity in charge of local content, and we want to take your experience and duplicate it to other ECOWAS member countries.
You heard that? Nigeria leading the way. They want to expect a round of applause. Nigeria is going to be
because even in the rate, I saw that they have a rate of 42% in terms of local content, but most of our countries, they are around between 10 to 20. So I think you did a good job as you create and manage these institutions. So, as I said, there is the establishment of a local content development agency. There is to create a fund to finance local content activities, to give fiscal or financial incentives, all this coming from government. Also, there is the issue of capacity building in terms of training, in terms of upgrading of local SME, SMI, to allow them to meet criteria to compete with international companies in terms of standard, price, quality, and performance, and also in terms of efficiency. There is also to create conditions to benefit from procurement for national or regional preference. I will come back to that. To create also local transformation industries. So therefore, multilateral banks or commercial banks should come to complement the government effort. So for us, the first job is first the government. The banks, it can be commercial or multilateral. It's just to complement the government effort in that issue. So it's why in its regional role, aiming to harmonize policies and strategies, the ECOWAS Commission, as a regional economic community, adopted several texts, community texts. For example, we adopt last year a regional mining code or regional mining act. We adopt ECOWAS mineral development policy since 2011. We adopt regional hydrocarbon development policy act. We adopt also regional local content and corporate social responsibility act last year. And also now we are developing a regional petroleum act that we think that by end of this year it will be adopted by our statutory bodies. So just to give you an overview that what at the regional level for the 15 West African countries, what we did, what we adopt in terms of enabling environment. So, and we ask all the government to align the national policy with the regional ones because they adopt it. You know, in terms of procedure, we did the draft and we discussed with all national experts coming from different ministries and parastatals at expert level, at sectorial ministers level, and we have what we call ECOWAS Council of Ministers, which include ministries in charge of regional integration, foreign affairs, and also ministries in charge of finance. They are members of the ECOWAS Council of Ministers for the 15 countries. We have ECOWAS Parliament also. So we go to defend this community text to the ECOWAS Parliament. And also according to the nature of the text, we can submit it to the authority of head of state and government involving also obviously the 15 countries. So the question is to come back to your question, what we are expecting coming from financial institutions. So first is to support SME, SMI by creating conditions aiming to reduce interest rate. I think the representative of NCDMB talked about, particularly when you take loan, to create specific credit lines for that purpose. I think there is an example you give for Bank of Industry and Exim Bank also, Nigerian Exim Bank, to promote the pooling of local investment funds for access for local entrepreneurs, to provide grant or subsidies, particularly for the multilateral bank. I know that commercial bank is difficult for them to give you grant or subsidy, but for example, like Afrexim Bank, World Bank, ADB, Islamic Development Bank, Agence Française de Développement, they can give you subsidies or grant, particularly in the activities related to what you call it, related to capacity buildings, or also activities related to undertake or carry out feasibility studies. So technical, economic, financial, social, and environmental studies. in order to make your project viable and in terms of bankability to attract a private or any other investors. So I think this is what I can say for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. All right, we go from ECOWAS now to Eastern Africa, to Uganda, to Kampala. Mrs. Jessica Chayune, hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, National Content Specialist, to really give some context and some meat to what we're discussing. Jessica, thanks for joining us. If you can hear us, I think I saw her image up on screen. They're joining us virtually from Kampala in Uganda. Uganda made, I believe it was a final investment decision back in February, last month, February, on oil discovery that was made there. Can you give us some more details on that? And if you can unmute your mic. Okay, we can see Jessica, we can't quite hear. Okay, we'll come back to Jessica Chayune, who again, National Content Specialist at the Uganda National Oil Company, to give us some practical example of what's going on over there as far as local content is concerned in Uganda. But let me come to Mr. Tayo Umidiji, who is head of strategic planning at the Nexim Bank. He's standing in, of course, for Mr. Abubakar Bello, the MD of the Nexim Bank. Sir, I believe with what you're doing is, of course, Mr. Yala has already talked about collaborations between you two, but you've also focused on oil servicing companies, right? Can you give us some more detail on that aspect of the local content development here?
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. Good afternoon, everyone. Executive Secretary of Executive Secretary.
Yes.
Yes, NCDMB, all protocols observed. Let me first of all convey the apology of Mr. Abubakar Babilo, the MD of Nexim Bank, who had wanted to be here in person, but some issues developed at the last minute, so he couldn't make it. He has asked me to represent him. Now, just like NCDMB, Nexim was established by an act of parliament in 1991 as an export credit agency and export development bank. So our main mandate is to support the external sector and increase foreign exchange generation through finance and risk-bearing services. Now, in terms of focus, we also have a mandate to diversify the external sector. And our own approach to diversification does not mean we should abandon the oil and gas sector. In actual fact, we believe that we should leverage on our strength in the oil and gas sector to develop the non-oil sector. Even the oil and gas sector itself requires diversification. Now, as we all know, over 90% of what we export today, of our export revenue, comes from the oil and gas sector. But within that 90%, okay, crude oil exports also contributes over 90%. So we believe that there is a need also to ensure that other non-crude products should also form part of our export content. Now, for us in Nexim, we are more or less a niche, player within that sector. Now, we support export of service, because we believe the way Nigeria's GDP is today, services contribute over 50% of our GDP. But in terms of exports, we have not really seen much in that area. So we focus on services exports, and then within the oil and gas sector, we focus on support for oil and gas services provider to develop local content and ensure that our local service providers are able to operate not only within Nigeria, but even within the regional market, particularly within the context of the African Continental Free Trade agreement. Now, the Director of Finance of NCDMB has already, taken us through the products, which we are working on together with NCDMB. There is a $50 million fund, which, we are partnering, to support this sector, which is in two parts. There's $20 million for women in oil and gas, and then $30 million for working capital and capacity building in that sector. Like he already explained, it's a counterpart funding arrangement. NCDMB is contributing $50 million. Nexim is contributing Naira equivalent of $50 million. So in essence, we're talking about $100 million, which, we are making available to this sector. Already, we have processed, and approved some applications, and in the next, I think in a matter of days now, some disbursement will be made. So we are quite keen in supporting this sector.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, sir. Shall we try Jessica Chayune again and see if we can get her on and see if we can hear her this time? Jessica, of course, again, the National Content Specialist at the Uganda National Oil Company. Okay, Jessica, I was asking about your final investment decision in February in Uganda regarding to oil discovery and how that relates to the local content discussion. Let's have a second try and see if we can hear you. I think your mic is muted. I think we're having the same challenges from earlier. Go ahead, try again, Jessica. Our IT folks, can you unmute Jessica? Okay, so we still, it's a shame. We can see her, but we can't hear her. Hopefully, maybe third time's a try. All right, let me come to Stanbic IBTC, Mr. Imo Uma, who, of course, is the manager of client coverage at Stanbic IBTC. Mr. Uma, you're very welcome. I wanted to ask if you can also weigh in on this conversation on how, Stanbic IBTC has supported local content operators in the oil and gas industry.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Mr. Moderator. So you permit me to stand on the existing protocol, and I want to use this opportunity to thank the Executive Secretary of Nigerian Content Development Board, Engineer Simbi Wabute, for setting up this forum for us to come and, not just talk to ourselves, but, sort of communicate and share thoughts on how, we can actually move the oil and gas sector in Nigeria forward. That said, if for Stanbic IBTC and for the broader financial institution in Nigeria, which of course, especially the banks, what you see is that the role of banks, traditionally is to get money from or funds from surplus spending unit and route those to a deficit spending unit. So what we typically just do is we mobilize funds and direct them to where capital is required. For us in Standard Bank and Stanbic IBTC, the notion for us is that Africa is our home, and we always drive Africa's growth. So on that note, we are, for the people that know much about Standard Bank, we are very, very strong and heavy when it comes to mining and upstream business in Africa. So essentially, we've sort of put our balance sheet behind quite a number of deals in Nigeria, and syndicated deals. The list is quite enormous. So we have the Nigerian LNG Train 7 facility, which we also participated. We've done deals with which we supported in Drama for their fertilizer plant, and quite a number of oil and gas projects. So So we are quite keen when it comes to oil and gas and to support the players in Nigeria. The truth is, so we see, of course, with the help of Isaac Yala, he had sort of provided the background with respect to the local content that was set up, law that was set up in 2010. For most of the people that are probably bankers that were around at the time, you realize that they were, it was quite good news. Players in the industry, especially oil and gas companies, were quite happy because of the opportunities that dotted the landscape. Businesses that were otherwise would have, been given to foreigners are now, falling on the hands of Nigerians. So the big question was, then how do you sort of, fund all these opportunities that you've sort of found yourself? And so it was the banks that, really, took over upon itself, and even fiscal authorities, like NCDMB that also provided funds. So that has helped players, to this day. It was a good problem to have than to have most of the project fall into the hands of foreigners. For Stanbic IBTC, we will continue to support oil and gas sector, and I think I'll pause there. And yeah, so we're quite keen. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Excellent stuff. Thank you, sir. Mr. Omijiji, I want to come back to you. I want to ask you about, I guess, perhaps collateral or metrics that are used to accept requests for upfront financing to enable execute contracts, for instance. One, a application that is under a collateral structure backed by a bank guarantee from a commercial bank acceptable to Nexim. And then two, credit insurance bonds from top-rated Nigerian companies. Are those part of the metrics that are under, that are used to, I guess, acceptable to Nexim when it comes to financing these requests from these indigenous players?
Like you rightly observed, there are different types of.
Sorry, if you speak into your mic, sir. So sorry.
Hello.
Yes, there you go.
Okay. So, I mean, there are different, options when it comes to collateral arrangement. Some of those transactions, are self-liquidating. Yeah, I mean, for some of these operators, some of them have, receivables, which they could borrow against, but even when those ones are not available, some could, provide insurance bond or even bank guarantee where, they find it easier to provide that. So, I mean, some of them offer different types of arrangements. So what matters most for us is the viability of the transaction, and then we sit down with the client, to look at the best option in terms of securing the transaction. So that's it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Yala, let me come back to you just to piggyback off of that. I want to get into, and I know we're pressed for time, and there's so much to discuss on this matter because it's so interesting and in-depth. Challenges, or when it comes to funding. We just asked, of course, a representative from Nexim about the items that they look at before, accepting these things on a risk basis. Well, can you speak to, I guess, some of the challenges within the area as far as getting this funding to these local content players?
Yeah, thank you very much, Rotus. I think if you look at the entire room, if you look at the value chain of this funding thing we talked about, from the multilateral institutions, funding institutions to private equities and all of it, there's a very, very important element, which is the point of sale element, which has to do with the commercial banks. Most of the beneficiaries, and some of them are contractors here or players in the oil and gas today here, will tell you that the intervention point is the commercial banks. And I stand tall to say here, just like when the executive secretary made this presentation, to say those sponsors are some of those who will definitely continue to do business with and all of that. Outside of Stanbic IBTC here, I am sure there is no other commercial bank present in here. And most of these commercial banks are the point of sale to most of these clients we're talking about. So that is a very critical challenge because if you go back and look at the closeout of 2021, these financial banks in Nigeria, basically, to speak to, made over 4 trillion in profit, and all of it. So 4 trillion in profit in Naira if converted, it's talking about $2 billion. So the question now is, even if you set aside a 5% of that, that's about $100 million, which can help to support the growth of this kind of companies we're talking about. So it's a very critical challenge dealing with the DFIs and those intervention points where it's the commercial bank. So there's some level of disconnect at that point in time, which is a very, very key challenge. So my call out is for most of these commercial banks to also come into the room, into the play, so we can sit down together and be able to design these templates, these credit templates that can fit into the current activities, innovatively create that kind of rack system, that can support the growth of local content as we're speaking about today. So I think that's a very, very critical challenge. So I want to appeal to my contemporaries on the other side to ensure that they tend to, come into this play and then also see how we can provide the necessary support, if I might want to say that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. All right, ladies and gentlemen, excellent. Thank you so much. Round of applause. Third time's a charm. We're going to go again to Jessica Chayune, National Content Specialist at the Uganda National Oil Company. Jessica, I hope we can hear you this time as far as your final investment decision back in February, oil discovery in Uganda. Fingers crossed.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I didn't have right one.
Maybe I celebrated too soon.
Right now, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're getting there. If we're keep going, Jessica. Let's see.
Yeah,
It's a little
'cause
challenging.
I hear an echo, so which means somebody's microphone is not muted. But we had our first final investment decision on the 1st of February this year, and virtually we are going to have our first oil in 2024, early 2025. But we have a lot of infrastructure that needs to be developed. The money for the first oil definitely has been sanctioned, but there is need basically for us to be able to continue producing oil, because as we stand, only 10% of the Albertine Graben has been explored and licensed. And if the prospectivity of the remaining 90% is as good as what we have now, and also the need for replacement reserves, definitely will be in need of a lot of financing for the rest of the oil to come out of the ground, because we are creating a refinery, we are creating an export pipeline, and this infrastructure, we do not want to have white elephants. But really the need for African countries to come together to see how we are going to finance oil. We also have another challenge of capacity building, which we believe, because we are a nascent oil and gas producer, which we believe we can actually acquire this experience from other African countries, as opposed to our people going to China, to France, to Houston. So we can to be able to carry out all these value chain activities that are required. And I think the third area is on the oil and gas operations services, where in Uganda virtually we completely have nothing. And this is a very good area for other African countries to come and actually set up in Uganda and be able to take advantage of that gap we have, as opposed to us looking to the Western world to have that done. I submit.
Thank you so much. All right, so about 20%, yes, round of applause. Only 20% of what's been found so far has been explored, and they do want to continue there. So thank you so much, Jessica Chayune, Uganda National Oil Company, National Content Specialist. Mr. Amitiji, I keep getting a lot of questions for you. So I want to come back to you. Since inception, can you provide any figures behind support for export businesses that the Nexim has put forward, if possible, if you can, for us?
Okay. Since inception, in 1991, the bank has done over 200 billion naira, but that's in terms of direct support. Because like I said, apart from direct funding, we also provide guarantee services, so say another 100 billion in terms of guarantee, meaning that we undertake to pay if you borrow from another bank and then you don't pay. So everything put together in terms of total value of intervention, we are looking at something close to 300 billion naira.
All right, thank you for putting the figures there. Mr. Sidiko Duka, let me come back to you. Earlier, you were going through some points, and you mentioned supporting SMEs in order for them to, that's in the local content space, for them to be able to compete against the larger IOCs or international oil companies across the world. How can you flesh that out a little bit in terms of how MECOWAS plans to support those SMEs to be able to make them better compete?
Yeah, thank you very much. You see, for this issue, if you have followed what I said, is to reinforce the capacity of that SME and SMI, because in terms to update, or what you call it, because I am francophone, sometimes I don't have
That's fine. That's fine.
yeah, I don't have terminology in English. I think it's not update, it's upgrading.
Right.
Yes. So, and also in terms of training. So these companies, it will allow them to meet criteria to compete, and in terms of standards, in terms of how to calculate the best price, how to reach or to meet quality, and also how to meet performance, because they have to bid to compete, technical and financial offers or proposals. So they have to have all this quality in order to be in the same vein like any other major international companies.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that, sir. Mr. Mr. Uma, let me bring you back in here, Stanbic IBTC. I mean, you heard Mr. Yala talking about some of the challenges faced by getting more financing to local content operators. How do you think that can be scaled, those challenges?
Okay, so what is keeping most of these oil companies awake at night is really capital. And for us in the banking sector, there are quite a little of ways that you can sort this capital challenge. Of course, capital typically is either you can raise capital by way of equity or debt. Now, there are a variety of solutions that we've not really seen a lot of those happen in Nigeria, especially within the oil and gas sector. There are opportunities like debt capital market, which essentially we tend to see the industrials, tap the market for that. When I mean debt capital market, is essentially, tapping the market, maybe launching a bond. So I've not really seen a lot of oil and gas companies do that. That's a huge opportunity for the oil and gas companies to also take. We also have equity capital market, which essentially is also there if you are looking at tapping equity. We are not seeing a lot of those beyond, I think, SEPLAT. We've not seen the upstream companies, launch or tap the market, try to raise, do IPO, or maybe right issue. That is completely absent. I think with the challenge that we're seeing, that is coming through, and the reality is the OEMs that we see today that sit in Europe and the Western countries, at some point, the flow of funds is going to start to dry up. So those OEMs are going to start to shut down their plants, and that's our read of the scenario. They're going to start to shut down their plant. So when they shut down their plant, it's going to affect Nigeria's production, in the sense that if you don't get the valve that you normally would buy off the shelf, you are going to run into trouble. So what do we do as a country, as a continent? So we need to start to, reassess ourselves and ask ourselves these questions of how we're going to sort of replace the foreign OEMs, because it's a problem that's going to happen in the near future if they're scaling down on oil and gas. And the kind of work we're seeing NCDMB do is something that should be supported by everyone. By way of trying to see, and I see those dot the landscape, especially in the Niger Delta where I sort of sit. So we have Nigerian companies now setting up workshop and trying to maintain these valves, meters, and gauges. And now the next stage I've also seen in the landscape is that Nigerian companies are actually manufacturing some of these, valves, meters, and gauges. And those are most of the inputs that you need to use in the upstream sector. So we need to put heads together to solve this problem. Otherwise, it's going to likely cripple oil and gas operation in Nigeria if we do not address it. And so simply for us as a bank, we have those avenues which we can support Nigerian oil and gas companies, which I've really stated. It's really a capital play. So we're saying it's either we're going to support you with debt, or we take you to the market to raise equity, right? Or we also do what we call financial advisory. We're also not seeing a lot of those happen. Typically you see an oil and gas company in Nigeria try to raise funds by themselves. But if you go to, the international oil companies, what they typically would do is they will give a bank a mandate and say, gentlemen, please, can you raise funds for me? I'm not a banker. You know the liquidity pool that is there globally and within Africa. Can you help me raise it? So we come back to you and tell you the different options that we have, right? That is financial advisory. And we agree with you. When we agree with you, the next step is financial arranging. We arrange the fund, and that is syndication. We know all the banks that are interested in oil and gas deal. We talk to them. Are you keen to support this deal? And this person, if it's for argument's sake, if it's $1 billion, someone will write a check for 50 million, another write a check for 70, just like that. By the time you do all that, you get a sense of how much liquidity you can raise, and you start to cut those and allocate. That is how the international oil companies are raising funds, but we, and I think maybe it's a case of maturity. Maybe we don't know, or maybe we are not matured to that level. So that's on it on financial advisory and arranging. Then we'll move to the next one, which is M&A. We are likely going to see within Nigeria a lot of mergers and acquisition happen. And that is really for them to run efficient operation. So you can have two companies running side by side. This one is producing valve, this one is producing meter, this one is producing gauges. Why don't you come together to run an efficient operation? So within where we sit, our read is that there's going to be quite a few opportunities for M&As. But you see, the challenge is also a lot of operators don't have a sense of, of these things because they don't even know what it means, right? So the role and our role as a bank is really for us to use forums like this to educate, people that beyond just, looking at bank debt, there are other avenues you can raise capital to fund your operation. And for us in Stanbic IBTC, we have a lot of those. And again, maybe just to buttress my point, Stanbic IBTC is an integrated financial services organization. What most people may know about Stanbic is either the pension business or the bank. But beyond these two businesses, we have other subsidiaries that we, so when we come into you to deliver the organization to you, we come in with the full suite of solutions that we have within the bank. And we have stockbroking, we have pension business, we have nominees. Nominees essentially helps, and so we have quite a few foreign investors that want to invest in Nigeria. That's also another way. They come to us, they ask us, are they good companies we can invest, right? Because they sit out there in Europe, the US, or Asia. They come through our nominee business to put in their investment. And that, in a way, is also a way of supporting the operators in the oil and gas industry. And that can come through from Stanbic IBTC Bank. We also have Trustee Services. Trustee Services is such that, most oil and gas companies too, they see traditional banks would always probably extend loan to you. And when they extend loan to you, instead of, sort of put your security or collateral in a trust, which makes it cheaper for you, they rather hold it, as a bank. So what we do in Stanbic is, subject to the client's consent, we will typically just put your collateral in a trust, and that way you can always, admit and take out a bank, and your cost of operation runs very, very low. So there are quite a number of things that we can do with the suite of solutions that we have. I'll probably, in other forums that we have, I'll be in a position to maybe help a few persons that are here that may need help. I'll talk to them and explain to them how these things work. And the primary objective is to get Nigerian companies to that level where they would replace the foreign OEMs to ensure that we continue to have the flow of oil and gas in Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Lots of emphasis on regional finance. Well, we've run over time, unfortunately, but Mr. Isaac Yala, I want to give you the last word here because a lot's been said about supporting what the NCDMB has been doing and how more heads have to get together to assist. Academia, you mentioned earlier, I think in your first answer about research and development, there are companies who have R&D budgets that can rival the budgets of countries. I want to ask you about what the role academia can play in, that's here, and I guess around other regional territories in, I guess, supporting what you're trying to do.
Okay, thank you very much for giving me that opportunity to take the last question. From our own perspective, I think what the essence for setting up the R&D fund was basically to address some of these issues we have in the industry, because we felt like in other climes where you have a complete connection between the R&D labs of these large corporations, and also academia. But we seem not to have that currently in the country. And part of what NCDMB has done in leading that project is to set centers of excellence in about 4 or 5 universities where we need to speak with the academia in this university and then see how we can connect them to the industry. Because you see, currently there's a complete total disconnect between what the industry does and what academia is trying to. And then some of the issues we also developed or we found out with academia is the fact that, the research are not very specific to creating the necessary value that is expected in the industry. So we're trying to work with them, to get them to realize the fact that, look, R&D is set up not just because we want you to do research and then get paid as a result of that, but to be able to create the necessary value that will be required, by the industry by coming up with proper, competent initiative, projects that we think that can come up to the point where NCDMB can take it on the back of that to begin to invest. When the ES mentioned in his opening remark, he also talked about some of the investment we've taken up in R&D. These are not the ones coming even from the universities themselves. These are very private entities that have been able to develop prototypes, that we have seen value proposition in them, and then we decided to invest in them. So that disconnect is what we currently have, but I think we're making all deliberate effort to bring everybody to the table to ensure that academia understand what we're trying to do and then bring that connect between academia and the industry. So we'll continue to be on that, collaborate with them to continue to be on that trajectory.
Thank you so much. I have so many more questions, but we have to end it there. But ladies and gentlemen, please, a round of applause for all our panelists. Mr. Isaac Yala, Director of Finance and Personnel Management at the NCDMB. Mr. Sediko Duka, ECOWAS Commissioner for Energy and Mines, Mrs. Jessica Chayune, Uganda National Oil Company National Content Specialist, Mr. Tayo Omidiji, Head of Strategic Planning at the Nexim Bank, representing Mr. Abubakar Bello, the MD of the Nexim Bank, and Mr. Imo Uma, Stanbic IBTC Bank Manager, Client Coverage. Thank you all so much, ladies and gentlemen, for your very insightful answers here on how to support local content players. We really appreciate it. Round of applause again for them, please. And pictures, so you can come up and take some pictures.
Please welcome our ES as he joins this picture. Thank you. Rotus, join them. Go back to your position. Yes, please. And just because I'm a woman and I have the microphone, just because, please allow me ask this final question to Nexim before he departs. This is the International Month for Women all over the world. And so we are breaking the bias. Yes, women, please clap. We are breaking the biases. There is still a question about how many women have been able to access the loan that is available in partnership between the NCDMB and Nexim. Women are clapping. Do we know figures about how many women have been able to access this loan? And why are we still asking for collateral? Mr. Nexim Bank, the microphone is still yours. Please come over. Thank you. And thank you to our ES who is sending in. Say, come and answer. Come and answer. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Women issues. Now, on Thursday, we held a meeting with the women representative in Nexim Bank. This issue came up. Now, we have, I think, like 12 applications that have been approved, which will be disbursed very soon. Don't forget, we started this project just, I think, the last half of last year. And usually, we go through that learning curve. Okay, the moderator was asking about the collateral requirements. So we keep going back and forth. The collateral requirements sometimes is flexible. Sometimes even your trinkets, your gold. CBN says there is asset collateral registry now. So if you could register that and have, that in the form that you can use as collateral is something we could accept. So I think collateral shouldn't be an issue. First of all, we focus on the viability of the transaction. Okay, so if the transaction is viable, is something that we can see through, then we can sit down and talk about how to support that.
Let me help my brother, because we are in this together. I think it's very correct. I've heard a lot of the women complain to me directly. As a matter of fact, last week I was with Alero Onosode, who brought a lot of complaints. And then I referred that to Ababello to have a conversation, to have some bit of clarity. Some of the complaints are very genuine. Some of them, sorry to say, very frivolous, because a lot of people think this is free money. What we do in NCDMB, we do not give free money. We give out loans with the hope that, with the belief that people will pay back so that others can benefit from that scheme. When we started the scheme with BOI, it took us almost 1 year, 2 months to loan out the first amount of money, because similarly, a lot of people thought it was free money and they wanted to go and access it. We had to go through the process, we had to refine it, and most importantly, we then called a stakeholders meeting where we listened to the potential beneficiaries as well as had BOI, and in the process, we found an easier way to deal with the issues. Today, I make bold to say it is one of the most successful loan schemes in this country. We have almost 54 beneficiaries out of it, and we have 99% payback on the loan that is granted. And it is the same way, yes, I'm a ladies' man, I believe in ladies, but I wanted them to, just for clarity, the reason why I'm a ladies' man is I have 3 daughters and 1 wife. So I'm a minority in my house. So no doubt that's what I am. But what we want to do is to make people realize that this is not free funds. You have to qualify for it. You have to pay back so that others can benefit. There are a lot of loan schemes in this country that I can beat my chest and tell you that 90% of the people who took the money don't have plans to pay back. And that's not NCDMB fund because it's a revolving fund. So I think I told the MD of Nexim that we are going to have a similar stakeholder forum so that it will not be rumor to say I applied, they didn't give me, they asked for collateral. We will all be in a room, discuss, and then look at the challenge and see how we come up with a solution. Thank you very much.
Thank you again to our ES there for addressing that very, very pertinent issue. All right, so next up, my co-MC, Joyce, the Titanium Daniels, is going to, of course, be taking you through another very interesting panel session here. This is on the institutional collaboration towards maximizing benefits of the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement for local content development and energy security, funding the gaps in infrastructure, research and innovation, human capital development, supply chain development, and green energy. It's packed. Very, very interesting. Joyce, you ready?
I'm ready.
All
Thank
right,
you, Rotus.
take it away.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you all for staying till this time. The wonderful thing about the final session is that we are the ones who have to speak for shortest time. So allow me welcome my panelists as they come up. From the African Continental Free Trade Area Abuja office, please welcome Mr. Michael Faniron as he makes his way here. We are discussing the Africa CFTA, so they will start the conversation. Please appreciate him once again. He's on his way. Joining up very closely is our pioneer executive secretary at the NCDMB, Mr. Local Content. Please welcome Dr. Ernest Wapa as he makes his way here. Thank you so much, sir, for being here with us. We are honored and delighted to have you today. Very closely is the chairman, Petroleum Technology Association of Nigeria, Mr. Nicholas Odinowe. Yes, please welcome him warmly. He's coming. Also joining us from Project 100 is Mr. Bode Oguntikpe. Please welcome him as he makes his way here. He is the MD Sprovab Nigeria Limited. And finally, from the Petroleum Contractors Trade section is Mr. Tayo Akinkumi. Same error I made before, I'm so sorry. Please welcome him warmly as he comes forward. Thank you all for being here. Thank you. So we will jump right into the conversation. As the minister had mentioned earlier, his concern about the Africa CFTA. Where, what, why, how, when, who? These are the questions. And we're going to allow you jump right in there to tell us how the tone is being set to ensure that we grow GDP across the African states with this opportunity right before us. So, Mr. Michael, I understand you have a presentation to make as well?
Yes, so I'm asked to make a presentation. So
okay.
If you have it up there.
You can make it from here, or do you want to be
I rather want to stand up.
Fantastic. Okay. Please welcome Mr. Michael Faniron from the Africa Continental Free Trade Area.
Okay, I think I will just... Do we have the
Don't worry, I know nobody else has a presentation, just him. He's setting the tone.
All right. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. All
Good afternoon,
protocols observed. I'm standing in for Mr. Francis Anatogu, who is unavoidably absent today. He would have loved to be here, and I'm happy to be here. And I'm happy to be on the same table with Dr. Owankpa, who we had the privilege of working with him in 2006 to start the local content, what becomes local content board today. We started at the department in NMPC. I was a consultant there. So I'm happy to see you again, sir. So talking about AFTA, the objective of AFTA, if you can put the slides on, I don't have the control here. You can go to the main slide, sorry. Can you control it? All right. So, AFTA is all about creating a single market in Africa, expanding the market that we have in Africa. Before now, the countries you probably trade within one country, but now we have about 55 countries that have signed to AFTA. So at the end of the day, so this is going to create the largest free trade area in the world by the number of countries that have signed onto AFTA. We are connecting about 1.3 billion people across these 55 countries in Africa. Then there's going to be elimination of trade barriers that are being between these countries. Before about 90% of these trade barriers will be eliminated within this country. So allows companies and enterprises to actually trade beyond the shores of their country. So this is supposed to boost intra-African trade, and it's supposed to increase what we have currently, and that's what AFTA is all about in short. Allows movement of people as well, in terms of goods, in terms of services. I will just spend only 5 minutes. If you can go to the next one, I'll spend only 5 minutes here. Can you go to the next one? So everybody has spoken about oil and gas and how important it is to Africa. I'm not going to talk more around that. What I just want to talk about, I'm happy the experts have spoken about that, is that we in Africa, we have to shape our own narrative. We still need the fossil fuel, what they call fossil fuel, what he called endangered resources, which is leading to an endangered continent. We still need that one to develop Africa. For example, in Nigeria, our resources currently, at our own rate that we are, at our own production rate, in the next 25 years, which is going to lead us to 2050, we only would have been able to do half of what we have currently, if we do about 2.5 million barrels per day. So which means as it is currently, we are at a disadvantage if we follow this. So I believe, I'm a firm believer in that Africa should be able to shape its narrative when it comes to energy transition, because we still need, even for us to diversify from the oil and gas, we still need oil and gas to diversify as well. And to even make investments in energy transition, we still need to make investments in fossil fuel as well. So I don't believe that the industrialized country, in quotes, should stampede Africa into doing this. But what opportunities do we have through AFTA for the oil and gas? Can you move, once I do a plan like this, just move to the next slide? Not this one. Okay. So what I have here is that inter-Africa trading, if you go back, can you go back, please? All right. So it makes it easier for people, for business to benefit from than in the past. So like I mentioned, trade barriers will be removed. The oil and gas companies in Africa will be able to benefit. Before, you are subject to what happens in the international market. Now, we can take advantage of the domestic markets as well. One other key thing is value addition to these resources, which will promote GDP of African countries, will create employment opportunity, and is going to boost industrialization as well. Before now, about 70% of our resources, the value addition to our resources, 70% of them is done outside the shore of Africa. And that is why I like the proponents of the current the PIA that was just assented to. I think the key objective of the PIA actually to have value addition to our resources in Nigeria. So, and again, increase in trade within Africa is going to boost energy consumption or energy demand. So automatically, this allows investment in energy. Then we believe AFTA is going to trigger investment in oil and gas, even from those countries that are, Itado said they are not going to fund fossil fuel. Why? It's because before you can only, maybe you have only one market. You only operate within a nation. Now you can operate with many nations. And again, after with the uniformity of protocols, we make sure that you take lower risk that means dispute resolution could be possible, because instead of doing it with one state, the protocols across the state, across the country, is going to be quite uniform. So it's going to create opportunity, or it's going to give them more market. I believe even the World Bank that says it's not going to invest in fossil fuel, they still put some exception that if this is going to provide access to energy mix, then they're still going to do. So I believe sooner or later, once we make our own narrative and we stand by it, we are still going to get investment in this oil and gas, as people have said earlier. For Nigeria, we believe after it's going to make us a refining hub. That's some of the assumption of what we think. And it's going to make us an exporter of gas with the gas industrialization agenda as well. And we think the other key one, and we believe that after it's going to make us an exporter of human resources and skill to Africa. We have the largest population in Africa, so we have the skill, we have the talent. If you look at the NCDMB human index, that the skill index, that shows significantly that we have what we can offer to Africa. If you can go to the next one, go to the next one, and to the next one. So these opportunities, where are they coming from? They are coming from the root of origin that after as established, and again industrialization. Because like I mentioned, this increased rate is going to boost industrialization for us to even go into decarbonization or wherever. So it's for us to use what we have now to actually industrialize for the future. So we still need this oil and gas for us to industrialize. If you can go forward, I'm trying to make them fast. So what are we doing after? So I will dwell a bit more on this and the next two slides. So we defined an implementation plan. We have a strategy within Nigeria, and again, working with other countries across Africa. So we've defined our strategy across 7 key goals. And if you look at these goals, can you go back? If you look at these goals, they're almost everyone apply to the oil and gas industry. If I look at goal 1, for example, in intervention 1.6, we want to grow export of petroleum products, components, equipment, and fabricated parts and oil and gas scale. Goal 2 is about workforce that I mentioned that we can export to Africa. In goal 4, we are talking about local demand, boosting our local content. So we are working within the oil and gas, and we have a very good working relationship with NCDMB on this. So I believe after it's going to allow Nigeria to maximize some of the potential of the oil and gas, and for us to take advantage of that. If you can go, I'll talk about that during question and answer. If you go to the next one. So I want to talk about this one. This is one of the things that we're working on currently. We believe that the capacity within Africa for oil and gas is not documented, or maybe it doesn't even exist. So we don't even know what are the capacity that we have now and the projected capacity that we're going to have in the next few years. So based on this, we are trying to identify the gaps in human resources, in skill, in terms of Africa, in terms of the demand of Africa for products, for services within oil and gas. And based on this, we want to project what the countries we need for the next 20 years, and want to assess that opportunity. What we believe will happen at the end of this is that we are able to create a platform for African opportunity to be able to, especially Nigeria, to be able to export human resources to other African countries, and for other African countries to have a platform where they can exchange services of human resources in the oil and gas. For this one, we will be looking up to the NCDMB to work with us in terms of this baseline assessment of skill within Africa, and again with Apple. So this is one of the things that we think we are going to do with NCDMB this year, and we believe that when we get to them, they are going to support us in terms of this baseline capacity assessment for oil and gas within AFTA, for us to be able to take advantage of AFTA. All right. I don't want to talk too much on our implementation plan. Maybe if question is asked around that, I'll talk about that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Faniro. You have actually given us what we need for the rest of the conversation. Thank you. It's like the goose that lays the golden egg. You have so much within the opportunities. So it makes it easy to ask Dr. Ernest Wapa the question about how do we then take advantage? You are an expert at building linkages sectorally. How do we ensure that within the region we are able to begin to collaborate better to take advantage of what AFTA is presenting to us?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Platinum, right?
Titanium.
Titanium.
Yes, unbreakable.
That's a very good question. It's even sounding like an exam question, but I'll try. So this stage we are at now is very, very encouraging, right? Because when we started, it actually started from the communities. It was very local. People talking about the local impacts. And rapidly we started looking more at a national level. How do we capture the interests of Nigeria? But even in trying to do that, it was very clear that we couldn't go far if we didn't link up with the continent. But as you know, there are many dreams that don't even get started. So it's a big thing that today we are sitting here, and in fact, it's not just today, for the past 3 weeks, every day I wake up, I'm hearing about African content, about African collaboration, and that's something to be happy about.
Yes.
So you have 2 guys driving it, at least, and they're in this room, the ES and Omar, the Secretary General. So it's very, very important that we grab this opportunity and talk about it. And when you talk about collaboration in Africa, it didn't start today. Africa fought together for independence. That was a spirit that leaned heavily on collaboration. So we have that experience. But we have something else. When Africans compete, it's a bit of a problem. When we have our African Nations Cup, you know, the relationships are slightly different and more sensitive. When we argue about whose jollof rice is better, it's also very, very sensitive. So we need to look at those things that worked for us during independence in terms of the collaboration. And as I said during a pattern session, we need to build the blocks for collaboration. Where Nigeria has a pattern, the other African countries need to start looking at to mirror such organizations. And then we will now have organizations like some of the things that NCDMB is doing. We should try to encourage the other African countries to create such institutions so that country is talking to country, organization is talking to organization, and then company is talking to company. That kind of segregation is necessary so that people understand each other. Once we've done that, it's then necessary to learn the lessons. And that's why what NCDMB is doing is very important. To do work is important, but it's important to communicate what you're doing. And the clarity with which NCDMB is communicating is very clear to everybody. You just see the kind of messaging that is coming out of NCDMB. If you are not convinced before attending an NCDMB function, you'll be convinced because they talk about it and they show you.
Yes.
And that's what we need to do. In starting this move into Africa, we need to pick some quick wins, establish that it can be done, do it, and show it. The moment you start showing those things, the interest will build. I can tell you from experience that when the real meat is going to be eating, a lot of people are going to have self-doubt. You will be looking at African countries and say, look, we have to do this. We have to do this. And they're asking themselves, can we really do it? Are we not going to be taking too much? Can we challenge these things? But unfortunately, now the foreign Western countries have taken the decision to depart. We don't have a choice. We now have to tell ourselves that we have to do it. And we can do it. We've shown in Nigeria with the NCDMB and the support of the government that these things can be done. When we had our doubts, we will go to some countries and they will say, look, all you need to do is tell them what you want and they will do it. And if you are confident if you're confident, that's where Nigeria has an advantage. Nigerians are bullish. They take the opportunity and they run with it. I was telling the ES that the young man, Julius Rohn, that spoke in the morning, 10 years ago, discussions I was having with him were basic, you need to find way for Niger Delta boys.
Yes.
Now he's talking like an expert. Yes. That's confidence. You know, I went to a friend's house. He owns, or he's a principal in one of the producing companies. He bought an asset. He was having a meeting with the CFO, COO, and he was chairman of the company and CEO, for Nigerians in their 40s, discussing strategy for how to deal with multi-billion-dollar investments. In 1999, in 2005, that discussion will be going on with 4 Europeans or Americans.
Yes.
So it is important that we see that these things are possible. And our African brothers should be courageous and confident. And when they hear these things that happened in Nigeria, better believe it. We don't have a choice now. In fact, we should be in a hurry to get these things going. So I'll yield now, and I'll reserve some comments for the ES and his call. So.
All right. Thank you so much. From one ES to another, for me, my biggest takeaway right now is the ability for us to tell our stories in a way that will inspire more courage and direction for others so that we can indeed collaborate. Please appreciate Dr. Ernest Mwapa once again, which will lead me very easily into speaking to PETAN, capacity development, and being able to export this capacity to the rest of Africa and models to use to achieve this. You already have experience in country. How are we going to spread this across Africa? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you very much for having Petan here. And I've listened to the various speakers. You know that before the advent of the local content, various speakers spoke and asked Nigerians to brace for the development that will come with oil and gas. So PETAN members listened. And today, these competencies have been built by PETAN members across all the entire value chain. We are there. And we have seen the growth of NCDMB when we collaborated with Pioneer ES and the others to enact the NOGIC Act. We've come a long way. But having said that, what do we do to continue to help out others from our mistakes? First, let's look at the model that has been set by NCDMB. I will call it intervention and developmental funding model. It has worked. From the 1% that has been pulled, competencies and capacities have been built in Nigeria. And every time you have a session, people are coming to ask Nigeria, how did you do that? Of course, the only way you can test this is to ask the Secretary General of Apple here to take what NCDB has done, the model, and take it to the African stage and follow it the way it's been done. Some of the mistakes, just correct them. And you'll find that we're able to give you more than enough to do your work. And by the way, thank you very much for inviting PETAN to observe in in one of the sessions you're going to do. That is the only way we can continue to export what we have learned as PETAN, as an institution, to other African countries. The NCDMB model has worked very, very well. It has given competencies and capacities across the entire value chain
in the Nigerian oil and gas sector, I can see a lot of better members here seated. They can sit here because they've grown competencies. I've seen them walk across the world to get mega deals. They can go there and talk because they've made themselves experts. So once again, I like all of us here to go back, sit down with NCDMB and take the NCDMB model that has worked. If you implement it, it will go a long way to helping bridge this gap between African countries. And I can tell you for sure, Petan has reached out to sister African countries, their local players, to start Petan, not actually Petan, association like Petan, in their space. And we're always available to go out there and preach that you only need to have competencies and capacities to be able to harness what is in your space. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. When you said not Petan, I was just thinking, okay, Senegal Petas, Ghana Petak, Liberia Petal. It was so easy to just have the Petas. Thank you for taking the initiative and giving hope, just like what the ES said. Thank you. Please appreciate the chairman, Petroleum Technology Association of Nigeria, Mr. Odinowe. There are the companies called Project 100, those who have received support from the NCDMB, non-financial support, I will say, but it was not free support, like the ES will add. They went through rigorous processes of, what do you call it? Qualification, that's the word, qualification, because of what has been done within the companies already in terms of capacity and growth and plans and strategy. And one of such winners, if we may, is here from Project 100, and he's seated with us, Mr. Bode Ogundikbe. He is from Sprovab Nigeria Limited. So as a recipient or as one of the members of Project 100, with regard to bridging gaps in terms of capacity, what would be your recommendation, sir? Yes.
Hello. Good afternoon, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me here. Project 100 was almost like a reverse of Petan. Petan had been, from my last speaker, has been in existence before NCDMB. But Project 100 was birthed right inside of NCDMB. It was a very good initiative. The Ministry of Petroleum, in collaboration with NCDMB, brought up the idea of Project 100. They also brought in KPMG to look into a number of companies in Nigeria and look at what their capacity is, what their strength is, what their commitment in the industry is. And at the end of the day, they came down to about 100 companies. What my recommendations would be with regards to human capacity development in what we're discussing today is that, just as my last speaker said, the NCDMB model is a fantastic model that we can use to maximize the African free continental area. It's over the years, as NCDMB has been giving us that capacity development, as winners of that initiative, they created an opportunity for the members, the winners, the beneficiaries to get trained at different times. With this same 1% from contracts in the industry, members of that group had a lot of training. We did a lot of strategic session. They visited our offices. They looked at our record, our processes, our corporate governance. They looked through everything we used to say that we own. And they started working with us. They put processes on the ground for us to follow. So if you look at going back, it started in 2019. Looking back now, that initiative has strengthened a lot of these companies, particularly some of them that didn't used to have that confidence in the industry. NCDMB has opened up the industry to many of us. And it has also given us that opportunity to have access to the market. Which market are we talking about? The IOCs, the national oil companies, NCDMB ensured that it gave us that platform to be able to, for them to be able to see us and for us to be able to see them and see the kind of value that we can give in the industry. So going back into the African local content scene, I think also the African Union, through the ACFA, can also look at this model and see how they can, have a proper communication with the stakeholders in the African space. Government, by giving them that value that was given to us by the representative. There's a value in ACFA, and value also attracts finance. It attracts finance. When there is value, there is a lot of finance. So, there has to be a discussion, a conversation with the banks, the DFIs in that space, so that there can be funding. There can be funding to develop human capacity. There can be funding to ensure that the kind of quality of human capacity we have in the African space is good enough to lead us to where we're going to. If you look at China, you look at how they've been able to support their companies. When you find out most of them were coming into Africa, you find out that a lot of those companies were supported by the government in China. So Africa can also do the same. The ACFA can, with their strength and with the countries that have signed, about 54 of them right now, they can show up capital, which would help build human capacity in the African space. So by so doing, we will not rely on external human capacity or external expertise from other parts of the world. And I believe if they can do this, it will really help to ensure that we maximize the potential of that project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Solving our problems from within our own space. And finally, last but not the least by any means, Mr. Akinkumi, models, yet more models. How can we ensure that we invite and keep? It's one thing to invite, it's another to keep it and grow the kind of collaboration that we seek across the Africa CFTA.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. I know sometimes it's difficult to identify the round peg in the square hole. So I'm the guy that skipped finance classes. By skip, I mean I had D's. But the good thing is I have an engineering degree and I can quickly run through the practicality of what we've seen from experience. I think we've all agreed that for us to get to that common prosperity building in Africa, in-country value retention is key to that, right? So it's a well-known fact, and I think we need to going by what has been said at NIES and everything that's been said here today, we need to keep that on the front burner. With that said, I just want to go in and talk a little bit more in the value chain. The General Secretary General of Apple mentioned it about this has to be looked through in the value chain. So I'll take a leap and look at the vendor side of financing. So it's not any different as vendors or technology providers or service providers. We are facing the same challenges when it comes to funding. Maybe a little bit more than that in that the events of the past 3-4 years has led to several divestments, several mergers and acquisition, several assets depreciation or fast depreciation that then has made us lose the credit ratings that we need to get access to fund. So it's a challenge. But having said that, those challenges are still surmountable, and as technology providers, we will go back to what we know, which is technology. So I'll take two things just to address that. The first one is pretty straightforward. It's about ESG, because one of the concerns, one of the challenges of funding is ESG. I mean, there's a lot of requirement now for ESG performance in the market for you to be able to get that. And what we can do as technology providers and what we're doing is to make sure we help our customers and as well as the project sponsors to overcome those. In other words, deploy our technologies in a way that can help them reduce their footprint. So that's one thing. The other one is the one that I think is a little bit more germane to this discussion, and is about improving the project economics, right? Tight fund, tight economics, we need to help them do that. And in doing that, product improvement, product development, and all of that, we need to look at the viability of those projects. And in doing that also, we need to look at the investments that is needed to support those projects in country. And that's where we have found out that the unique nature of our industry, specifically in Africa, is that we do not always have those critical mass of work to support the investment decision we need to make in country. In other words, the hurdle rate required to make an investment in country has gone higher. We talked about the fund is difficult to reach, so we need to be a little bit more inventive. And I cannot be happier to be having a discussion here, because for me, we know that none of the African economies can support everything and the work that is needed to provide a long-term payback to investment in every country. Nick mentioned it. There's a lot of investment that has gone into Nigeria by different individuals to be able to get to that space where the quality, the performance, the expertise is established. It's now time to go. The problem, though, is there is not enough work. Okay? So now the after provides an interesting opportunity where we can then look at the available work or needed or supporting the value retention, of supporting the development of our resources, and then look at what are the strategic investment that needs to be made for in-country, or better still, regional capability to support those. So I think, kind of round this up, because I know you have maybe some more questions. I think we need to keep remembering that the AFTA gives us a framework to leverage. We need to make sure that we bring in pragmatism when it comes to local content policies and mechanism across Africa in such a way where it does not require having to replicate capacity or capability across those those countries that are having those resources, but allow the free movement, if you so will, of goods and services, as well as the technology. So I think that's a very good place to start, and it's a good discussion to have.
Thank you very much. Please appreciate Mr. Tayo Akinkunmi for your intervention. No, I do not have more questions. And this is because in a short while, we will open the floor to participants to ask a few questions. We'll just take about 4 questions only, but not to this panel alone. They will be allowed to ask the questions even to other speakers who have been up here before. So we'll need to release you fast enough to do that. Is that okay by us? Fantastic. We don't want us also to fall into the trap of repeating ourselves, because a lot has been said in this very short conversation. You've given us direction about recording our quick wins so that we can build confidence for more wins. We should tell our stories, like the story of Mr. Julius Rone, so that people can see that it has been done and can be done again. We should focus on strategy. I think almost everybody mentioned the word strategy. Using the NCDMB model, constantly reviewing, thorough attention to inventions and innovation, like you mentioned just now, clear communication of value constantly, sometimes we are not saying it clearly enough so that we can attract more financing from banks and DFIs, pragmatism to policy, and in-country value retention. We should improve project economics. I mean, so much has been said. Please appreciate all these distinguished speakers on this panel as we rise for a photograph, and we welcome our ES to join us. Thank you very much.
And you prevented me tactically from talking about his golf.
See, I carry my hustle for my shoulder. My jacket, I'm a woman soldier. Cause if money not the move, mama, alright. So if you don't do it for me, do it for my brothers.
When I was young, I heard people preach about Jesus. Word was give to Caesar what is Caesar's. I see the goal, I got my hustle on my shoulders. Jeje the Munlo man, Aniruku Akuba. Steady on my grind and focused for many reasons. Been here a couple years and I'm prepping for more seasons. My girl's my motivation, to my mommy, you should see this. Word to Almighty Allah because He sees this. He sees it all, what's above and what's beneath me. Lone sheep amongst the wolves and yet He sheets me. Automatically, but why they can defeat me. Cornerstone levels, first they hate me, then they need. Big up to all the girls I dated. Whether you gave this
Thank you. Thank you once again to our speakers on this panel. From PETAN, we had our chairman, Mr. Nicholas Ondinowe. Please appreciate them as they return to their seats. From the Petroleum Contractors Trade section, we had Mr. Tayo Akinkumi. From Project 100, we had Mr. Bode Ogundikbe. Of course, we had our pioneer ES, Dr. Ernest Wapa. And from the Africa CFTA, we had Mr. Michael Faniro. Thank you once again. Before we go into the conversation time where we have about 4 people speak and ask questions or give feedback, we have a short presentation by the Lillian Yeri Dance World. It's a short cultural presentation for us to relax in the African setting. After that, we converse for a few moments and then we move to the next section. But just before that, we just want to be sure that we are ready for the cutting of the tape. Okay, Lillian Yeri Dance World, welcome on stage. You have 5 minutes only. Thank you.
All right, another round of applause for Lilianeri Dance World. Very colorful, very energetic dance number that they put on there. Thank you. A round of applause for them once more. All right, next up, we're going to call to the stage Uju Palsy. She, of course, already moderated a panel, the very first panel session. She's going to tell us more about the Invest and Trade Africa show. So we'll be expecting Uju any moment from now. And I think we're going to have an official launch on that particular show. So with a whole lot that has been discussed today, it is very pertinent that we're going to be having the launch of the Invest and Trade Africa show, since local content is very pertinent to investment here on the African continent. So any moment now, we're having Uju Palsy coming up to tell us more about the Invest and Trade Africa show. Okay, so we're going to have a promo video. We're going to play a promo video for you. Here it is.
upon a time. We heard the stories from foreign media. We were told who we were and what to do. Our resources drilled, exported, and commoditized for Western economic development. Like an item in the flea market, our resources were hawked and sold back to us way more than we bargained. Africans developed the penchant of buying what they should be selling and sell what they should be processing, leaving a whopping 600 million Africans without access to energy in an entire continent on sheer survival. But that was then, and this is now. The Invest and Trade Africa show is changing the narrative. We are lending our voice to energy from oil and gas, which are primary economic drivers of present-day Africa. We are telling the African story to a global audience while joining forces with African policymakers and stakeholders in creating our own destiny. We will make our regional markets work, creating new structures for our resources, which will provide jobs for millions of Africans and provide them with a healthy standard of living. Welcome to the new Africa. You're watching the Invest and Trade Africa show.
Welcome back. It's been 2 years and some great work putting to get us here. First of all, I thank immensely my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, for betting in me this vision and giving me the grace to accomplish it. Also, I want to say a big thank you to the Invest and Trade Africa team, both old and new, and everyone who's contributed one way or the other in getting us here. Thank you for believing and truly giving. To set up projects in this capacity, you need support, and support we've been very much given. We therefore thank the Executive Secretary and the management of the Nigerian Content Development and Monitoring Board for the sponsoring of the premiere season of the show. In addition, we are very grateful to the Secretary General and members of the APO for their unflinching support. We are a digital broadcasting media service across the World Wide Web, giving us the leverage of communicating Africa to different parts of the world. And on the 29th of March, we will go live. So stay tuned. We will get to you through your data and digital footprints, and we hope that we bring you the value you truly deserve. Thank you very much. And at this time, I'd like to call on the Executive Secretary of the NCDMB, the Secretary General of the APO, and the Technical Secretary of the National Local Content of Senegal to join me upstage and have us do the honor of cutting the tape. You need a microphone.
All right. Thanks for giving us the honor to unveil this, the Invest and Trade Africa show. I'm sure my brother here, Farouk, it's all about Africa. You have championed this cause of Apple for quite a while, and you've made a lot of strides. And I guess this is another banner that will work with you to realize the dream of Apple. So today, we unveil this to the glory of God in the name of the Father, in the name of the Son, and in the name of the Holy Spirit.
Congratulations to the Invest and Trade Africa show. Many, many more shows to go. Congratulations to the entire team, to the NCDMB, and to Apple.
All right, it's time for the Q&A. As promised, I believe it was four questions, yes?
Four.
All right, so we have already identified this gentleman here. Sir, if you want to please introduce yourself and then...
Ma'am, I see you.
And then let us know who your question is directed at. Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Just hold on one moment. Photographer, videographer, do they have to stand in a particular place, or would you focus on them? You focus. All right, fantastic. Please stay where you are, sir.
Thank you very much. My name is Afam Umeano. I'm the managing editor of Knoxpeed Energy Plus magazine. My question goes to the ES and by extension, the man representing Africa here. It has to do with infrastructure in the oil and gas industry. As we all know, you can't build something, you can't put something on nothing. Therefore, in appreciation of the huge work done by NCDMB, I want to ask, to what extent is NCDMB building the framework, the background of the infrastructure that will enable all the capacity we're building to enable the beneficiaries of these efforts to have a soft landing in terms of the infrastructure we have. As you all know, just like in other African countries, most of the infrastructure that control our oil and gas production were colonial in nature. We have not done enough audit to understand exactly the level of decay we have in our infrastructure. And then if we have all this capacity being built and we are still unable to understand that things like oil spills are products of maybe bad infrastructure or decaying infrastructure. If we don't address them, we'll have so much capacity, but we don't have the foundation on which they will stand. So I want to know what NCDMB is doing in that direction. Thank you very much.
Number two.
Thank you very much. My name is Ifi Akerele, and it's not really a question, it's an input backed by women, but it's for the general industry. It's for the former ES, who I'm so happy to see again. I know the struggle back then in 2004-06, and the present ES, who has done extremely well, but there's a but. The NCDMB has played a very significant role in advancing Nigeria's local content policy in the engineering sectors of the oil and gas industry. Unfortunately, other value chains like legal, banking, shipping, and insurance have not been fully optimized. The challenge is how to broadly optimize these areas. I know that there's a lot of need for understanding, raising of awareness, stakeholders meetings, data collection, But if you've done so well in the technical side, it's time to come down to the soft part of the industry. So I'm just making that as a suggestion that we engage stakeholders and collect data, know where the shoe hurts, and see if you can also interfere and help advance their cause as well in the local content. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Sir, if you want to introduce yourself and give who your question is directed at.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Anyonye Kailoma. I represent Platform Petroleum Limited. I feel concerned because in the course of this session, there is a vital question that was raised or issue that was raised that I didn't see addressed in the course of various presentations. The first speaker made a comment that Africa is not against saving of global environment, but that Africa should not be dictated on how to go about it. Now, if mankind has reached consensus that development of hydrocarbon is going to imperil the climate, thereby putting to danger the existence of woman in this planet Earth, will it be justified for Africa to continue to develop hydrocarbon in defiance of what has been identified as a danger to mankind? That is my question. Thank you.
My name is Kashim Ali. My first intervention is to Mr. Omidiji of Nexim. Nexim is 31 years old, and according to him, it has contributed 200 billion naira direct support to export and 100 billion as indirect support. Now, I want to know, what is the contribution of that to the total export in Nigeria? What is the percentage of their contribution in terms of the total export from Nigeria over this period that they have been in existence? And how much of the blame can they take of the low level of export from Nigeria if they were set up to stimulate export? Then I want to talk a bit about after. After, the headquarters is in Ghana. I think last year I was in Ghana at the height of this crisis between traders, Nigerian traders, and the Ghanaian authorities. And I was asking this question: what is AFTA doing about that? Because AFTA is already in place, the secretariat is in place, is in Ghana, and it's in that same Ghana that we're having these issues. There's also the issue of movement, free movement. If you recall, there was a time Aliko Dangote complained that he flew into Angola and was returned. Because they say he was asked to come and get visa on arrival, but he got there and he couldn't get it. So have they straightened out this, and have they developed any framework for monitoring progress? Because there have to be framework with template for measurement, real measurement, exactly the type of thing the NCDB has done. Because today we're talking about numbers. It's good when you are talking about numbers, it's easier to understand. Tell me the percentage achievement, tell me the figure, but not just to say we have done this or that, which is generally what I've heard from both AFTA and Nexim. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And finally, please.
All right, so very own Mr. Saduku.
Yeah. Good afternoon. My name is Sediku Duka, ECOWAS Commissioner for Energy and Mine in Abuja. So my issue is that what during the COP26 they decide to stop the utilization of fossil by the end of this year. And if you remember,
Thank you, sir. I've been instructed to please give the microphone to one last speaker.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dalakwa Okulaja-Kotsun. I'm the Executive Director of Ikwana Refineries in Akwa Ibom, and I'm also the Vice Chairman of the Crude Oil Refinery Owners Association of Nigeria. Thank you so much for giving me the time to speak. I just have one or two comments. And the first one is that, you know, it's fantastic that we're talking about gas and alternative energy, how to create alternative energies. But the truth of the matter is that hydrocarbons are not going anywhere. And I just want to take exception to the rule that, you know, everybody's beginning to call crude, giving it a bad name. The point of the fact is that what we need to do is that we need to find cleaner ways of refining our crude and start increasing our domestic capacity of refining in this country. There's no point in Nigeria being the 6th or 7th largest oil producer in the world, and we're exporting every single drop of crude oil we have at no value added. And then we're bringing in at billions of dollars to the detriment of our national infrastructure petroleum products that are even inferior to what we could produce in this country. Nigeria is selling her crude as a premium because we have one of the best crudes in the world and one of the most easiest crude to refine. Where we are building our own modular refinery, it's called Kwa Ibo. It's the best in the world. It's the easiest to refine. So I think it's about time, like this gentleman over there said, we should stop trying to imitate these Europeans and find an African solution, find a Nigerian solution. We cannot keep piggybacking on these people that have had 300 or 400 years of experience and they still haven't gotten it right. Where are the lessons being learned? We're supposed to learn lessons from them and then improve our capacity to do things properly. The main issue that we're having in Africa, and especially Nigeria, is not capacity or our technical ability, because it's not rocket science. It's our ability to access funding. That is very, very critical, and that's why I'm here today, because I wanted to hear what are the solutions. I mean, how can we get around this bottleneck? Because it's a bottleneck. If you don't have money, you can't do anything. Even if you have the best minds in the world, which I believe Nigeria does have. We have some of the best minds. We have some of the best companies in the world. But because we're not able to access these funds, and because our government, I'm sorry to say this, but this is my own personal opinion, they're not putting our natural funds in the right places. They're putting it elsewhere. Like, I represent the modular refinery platform, and I know that, if we had been given that 1.7 billion that they decided to put into that Rivers refinery that should be sold for scrap, we could have had 30 modular refineries at 30,000 barrels a day, producing very, very high quality refined petroleum products, which could help, really, really help us increase our capacity to provide PMS and everything in this country. And when we build it up, we'll be able to export. And therefore, we'll be earning our own dollars so that we won't have to be depending on other countries to fund us. Thank you so much. Sorry to take up some time.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. So our responses will begin now. Yes, sir.
I think I was listening to Dolakwa and I forgot the questions. But let me talk about infrastructure. I think the Knox Speedman asked a question about the framework for infrastructure development, if that has been set. And I think, let me start by saying, I think during my speech, I mentioned some of the contents of the Petroleum Industry Act. This was passed into law in 2021. One of the things that the Act also set out is to build that framework for infrastructure development in the oil and gas sector. Hence, you have the 0.5% that is set aside for the downstream and midstream infrastructure development. So that's a very clear framework that has to be worked on if, as at when the fund becomes available, it is judiciously utilized. The other point to make is that the fund will not become available like yesterday. The Act was passed in 2021. It will take time for that fund to accumulate for it to be utilized. In the same vein, even when NCDMB was established, it took us time to accumulate the fund to get to a proportion where we had to first be self-funding as an organization, and then secondly, begin to deploy the fund to support government critical intervention. And I think the NS said it very clearly. As NCDMB, we also set up a framework in order to ensure and support the development of infrastructure. Infrastructure is not only about the gas pipelines or the CPFs, as the case may be. Infrastructure also includes your road. It includes your railway. It includes your air transportation. It includes everything you can think of in terms of infrastructural development. Today, one of the greatest challenges you have, even in the country, in moving products from one point to the other, is the road infrastructure network. And I dare say that this government has done a lot in terms of focusing on that infrastructure. Today, you have the railway line running from Lagos to Ibadan and to Abeokuta, as well as you have the railway line running from Abuja to Kaduna, and there are others coming to take you to Katsina and from Port Harcourt to Maiduguri. Those are critical infrastructure that you need to put in place to satisfy the movement of hydrocarbon. For instance, in Canada and in the US, the bulk of the petroleum product that you see is moved out of the producing region through railway line to where it is needed. So such infrastructure will enable us move these products into where they are needed. And the government has done a lot by investing in those infrastructure. You talk about even evacuating goods from the port. You need a rail infrastructure rather than have all these heavy trucks carrying these goods and services that damage our roads. So all those investment has been done. And I'm sure if you go to the Ministry of Transportation as well as the Ministry of Works, you'll see strategy with regards to the various infrastructural development that has to be done. In our little small way as NCDMB, we have also invested in the manufacturing infrastructure, if you can say that, within the oil and gas park scheme. Like we always say, before the end of this year, we'll commission 2 of those parks, all to incubate manufacturing to help the oil and gas sector. So you see that there is a thinking, serious thinking behind infrastructure development. The AKK pipeline that I mentioned, the strategy is to take gas rather than have the virtual pipelines continue to truck LPG or CNG back and forth. You have those gas pipelines that can take gas directly to the north, and perhaps the discussion to extend that to the trans-Saharan gas pipeline to Algeria and perhaps to Europe. So all those are being discussed and are being developed. Let me talk about the banking sector. I think it's important, Madam. A lot is being done with regards to the banking sector and the legal sector, as well as the insurance sector, since NCDMB came into being. The bulk of activities, even loans that are syndicated through the local banks. And the local banks have been responsible for financing projects all over. If you go back today, if they tell you the volume of FDIs that have come through them, in those days it used to be a direct thing between a local business and an international business, and they move the money back and forth. But today, to a large extent, you cannot move that money without dealing with local banks. And like you know, no one country is an island. We need these funds to come in, but the local banks are effectively being utilized. The bulk of the assets that were sold, be it marginal field, be it real assets, were done through the local banks today. When you talk about legal law, all the cases you have with the oil and gas industry today in the country are managed by the Nigerian lawyers. Where you have those discussions is when people bring in investment, and as part of the condition to bring that investment, they tell you that the law that will take effect is the law within their jurisdiction. Is what you have to accept, because that's where the money is coming from. But in terms of the legal front, we've been working with the Nigerian Bar Association on corporate law. A lot has been done and a lot has been achieved. You talk about insurance. I joined the oil and gas industry in 1991. During those days, all insurance premium, or whatever you call them in insurance, were placed out of this country. Today, the bulk of activities, in terms, I see these things because they pass through me and I approve them, in the sense that the bulk of insurance activities within the industry is domiciled in country. The challenge we have had with the insurance industry, particularly the reinsurance, is the capital. Yeah, and that is not what NCDMB can solve overnight. It takes time. It's the capital within that insurance business, because, for instance, the Egina FPSO is about $21 billion. And you ask a Nigerian insurance corporation to insure $21 billion, they ain't going to get that money, even if you put all of them together. It's a reality, but these things continue to evolve over time. As NCDMB, we're in direct discussion, even with a reinsurance firm, to see how we can inject funds to raise the ante in terms of reinsurance in the country. So a lot of progress has been done. It only takes time to discuss with them and to listen with them, and you probably get that we've done quite a lot in that direction. I think when the afterman was making a presentation, he used one of our slides that shows you within a concentric circle, within a circle, the various activities that happen in the oil and gas industry. For every business that you do in the country, for instance, you take a drilling rig. For a drilling rig, you will, besides the rig itself, you will need people to provide food, so the farmer is affected. You need people to provide transport and take people there, so marine logistics is affected. You need lawyers that community will hire to disturb them because probably they are not being taken along. So the lawyers are also impacted. So it's important to take a holistic view in those things. I think Dolakbo was only making a comment. I think most importantly, she said we shouldn't call it crude oil again. We should call it hydrocarbon, because it's that crude that is entering people's mind. I think I took that out of what she said. I leave the after question for the afterman to answer. What else haven't I addressed? I think the questions directed at me have been fully addressed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Grateful. Mr. Michael Faniro from AFTA.
All right, thank you, sir. For AFTA, it's in phases. So after the signing of the contracts, on the agreement, so you have trading goods, you have trading services, you have resolution protocol, you have the protocol on the movement of people, you have things on intellectual property. There are quite a lot of things that negotiations are ongoing. And that's why in Nigeria, we have the Nigerian Office of Trade Negotiations. So this, after the signing of agreements, it's just across the countries. It's going to take time. And this protocol is on product by product, service by service. The Station Office is working on quite a lot of this for everybody to agree. And you know, negotiation in Africa or anywhere is going to take a lot for people to agree. And so as not to be seen their country as a dumping ground. Nigeria, for example, needs to negotiate well because we have the market. So we don't want people to come and dump everything here in Nigeria. So negotiations are still ongoing on all those protocols. Yeah. And as it is currently, we are working on an M&E for Nigeria. We got a donor partner that actually supported us on this. So we have a monitoring framework now. And after we've started, a lot of the African countries, a lot of the AFTA for other countries have started signifying intention of leveraging what we are developing on the monitoring and evaluation for their own AFTA. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Over to you, Rotus, please.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, very engaging Q&A there. Thank you so much to our ES for answering those questions, and of course, representatives from AFTA. Next up, it's closing remarks from Mr. Abdul Malik Halilu, who is the General Manager, Research Statistics Development Division at the NCDMB. A round of applause for him, please.
Sir, I see the hand of the ES up.
Sorry, I think there was a question on Apple. That man who said, since everybody is saying hydrocarbon is bad, right? We want to be alive. I think Apple have to address that. Yeah.
Thank you very much. If I got you right, what you said is that there is today a consensus in the world that fossil fuels are bad and that everybody should abandon it. If so, why is Apple dissenting? I think this is one of the biggest challenges we have in Africa. We sit and people set the agenda and they dictate, and we take what they say hook, line, and sinker, and we come to regurgitate exactly what they are saying. My understanding of the word consensus is there is no dissent. Everybody is in agreement. In this case, Africa has said that we are not in agreement. But because those who control world public opinion, those who control the media, have decided that this is what they want, this is an imposed consensus. There is nothing like that. As far as we are concerned, we are not against energy transition. But we will not be dictated to on the speed at which to make this transition. Basically, this is all we are saying. And I think we Africans should, for God's sake, be more critical when we take what the world says about us. Ask yourself, is what you are hearing really, how does it affect you as a person and as a continent? We should stop this regurgitation exercise. You hear from BBC, you hear from CNN, and then you just sit and, no, we disagree with that. Africa cannot change until we are able to sit and say that we disagree with you or we agree with you based on our own analysis of what is in our best interest. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Farouk, for that response. And the other bit again is, when I look at Africa and I look at the poverty rate, if you travel around the world, around Africa, you go to some countries, desertification, drought is killing people. And then you watch CNN, like Dr. Farouk say, they say you should come and donate to adopt a dog. You know, you've seen all those. Say you donate so that they can adopt a dog. And you can imagine, meanwhile, human beings are dying. So what do we choose? Is it the animals that will stay alive and let us die so that they will rule the world? I think we need to think twice about some of these things that we hear. And like I said during the NI years, very soon they will flood the African continent with free money and recruit all manner of NGOs to tell us how dangerous that hydrocarbon is. And if possible, a study will be published to say gas causes cancer, so that we will all be afraid of it and drift from it. Watch it, it's coming. You remember that I said so. Thank you.
Well said. The day is fast spent, so you permit me to stand on existing protocol to read the closing remarks. As we draw the curtain to the end of the Africa Local Content Investment Forum with the theme Evolving a Pan-African Strategy towards Sustainable Funding of Oil and Gas Projects, NCDMB is highly honored to have hosted over 200 online. The quality of participation spanning our parent ministry, the Ministry of Petroleum Resources, the NNPC board, members of the Africa Petroleum Producers Organization, financial institutions, oil industry service companies, project promoters, regulators, the media, and a host of other stakeholders is quite reassuring that Africa has the institutional capacity to mobilize its members towards achieving a common aspiration. The program was structured to provide a platform for stakeholders connected to hydrocarbon development in Africa to meet and shape the future of the oil and gas industry in the continent amidst energy transition realities and funding constraints. In this regard, the Honorable Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, ably represented by the Permanent Secretary, gave us a quantitative analysis of the huge resource endowments in Africa. He also elaborated on our binding constraints to our developmental aspirations and the imperatives to unlock the enormous below and above level potentials in Africa. Our host, the Executive Secretary, NCDMB, Engineer Simbi Wabote, in his welcome address, elaborated on NCDMB's commitment to act as a catalyst for achieving regional cooperation within the context of local content development, access to markets, and peer review. He also drilled on how the Nigerian Content Development Fund has been deployed towards hydrocarbon development, including LPG penetration projects, local refining, manufacturing, and a host of other interventions. These interventions with the Nigerian Content Development Fund, which is under $1 billion, bears eloquent testimony to the positivity of creating a special Africa Oil and Gas Development Fund to accelerate the pace of in-continent value creation and capacity development. The ES has also assured us that key insights from the technical sessions with the Apple Energy Investment Corporation and, of course, the Apple Secretariat. The Secretary General of Apple announced the implementation of the Future of the Oil and Gas Industry in Africa study in the light of energy transition, which has as its core the creation of a new development model for the sector anchored on funding, infrastructure development, capacity building. These initiatives, if well implemented, will drive optimal utilization of respective African countries on our own terms. That was emphasized. In his welcome address, the Afrexim Bank elaborated on their service offerings, which showed significant presence and commitments to funding oil and gas projects. He cited examples of the Dangote project, the signing of the over $1 billion agreement with NNPC, and also our own UTME floating train. This is reassuring considering the new reality that Africa must enable its indigenous oil producers and national oil companies to position as the next generation project promoters that will drive equity financing in exploration and field development. Afrexim also advised that the hydrocarbon framework must consider elements of project risks, infrastructure, and also prioritization. It was also brought to the fore that our gas reserves figure is estimated at over 600 trillion cubic feet, that only 1.3% of that is being produced, which means there's huge opportunity to actually optimize utilization of our gas reserves. The binding constraints has been funding to support infrastructure on how we want Energy Investment Corporation Fund, which is also being spearheaded by Afrexim Bank. So it's important that we support that. I know Nigeria is doing its best to support the creation of that fund, which will be specifically targeted at building the necessary capacities to support the local supply chain and also make the funds available for project development. With the momentum around global energy transition and commitments by countries and international oil companies to reduce carbon emission, the need to look inwards has never been more urgent, as we can no longer depend on global financial institutions to finance field development projects. These views were well captured during the second session, discussing financial institutions as catalysts for sustainable local content development. Cases were made about creating special funds for SME development, for capacity building, for creating the platform for business-to-business meetings. It has been established that Nigeria is a more matured economy in terms of its local supply chain. So how do other African countries leverage on the capabilities that have been developed in Nigeria to support the growth of small businesses in other African countries? We've also been advised that we should look at beyond just equity financing. We should look at the capital market as a target pool as a source of funding for Africa projects. The conversation around building the institutional capacity for regional cooperation to promote production, intra-continent trade was well articulated during the third panel session on institutional collaboration towards maximizing benefits of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement for local content development and energy security. Our population figures were provided, 1.3 billion, and also our reserves level of 126 billion barrels were also provided. And that makes Africa one of the very, very important continents in terms of hydrocarbon reserves. But what is critical is that we need to harness these resources and take advantage of our competitive strength and build the necessary capacity in order